Honestly, with how this is going and how busy my life is, I might have to rename this series to the Devils Bi-Weekly Roundup. Regardless, let me know what you think of the name change. My name is Lippy, and this is, at least for now, the Devils Weekly Roundup. Okay, so it has obviously been 2 weeks since the last episode. Sorry about that. But we're going to talk about the past couple of games here in which the Devils have turned the calendar. It is 2024. It is a brand new year, brand new Devils. And while some of these games are going to be kind of ugly and there is a lot of negative, there is a lot of positive. The Devils actually have a winning record so far here in the new year. So let's talk about the first game here. It was a 6-3 win versus the Washington Capitals, so that's great. It is a regulation win. It is versus a Metro Division opponent, and the Devils, honestly, they looked pretty good. Nico had 2 goals. Mercer was chipping in. McLeod was standing out. Honestly, it was a very good team performance. I believe this was the game. This was the first game without Jack. Yeah, Jack is injured. He's considered week to week. Timo, I know, is injured. And, this was definitely the beginnings of what is going to be a challenge for the Devils. But the Devils get a much needed win, especially versus a team that, remember, they only exist to beat the goddamn New Jersey Devils. But I digress. Honestly, overall, like I said, Holtz was contributing, Mercer was contributing, Lazar, like the bottom 6 was contributing, which, as we get further into this episode and we see where the team's heading, is going to be important. This next man up mentality is going to be very, very important for the Devils because they've had some injuries. Jack is injured, Timo's injured, Palat is injured, Siegenthaler is injured. Speaking of the Siegenthaler injury, that would actually come in the next game here, which was against the Chicago Blackhawks, which apparently the Devils and the Blackhawks are heated rivalries because this was insane. There was a lot that happened in this game, but it was a 4-2 regulation win. Goals from Holtz, Nemec, McLeod, and Toffoli, which are really great. But this game was chippy. In total, there was 26 and 38 penalty minutes from both teams. What kind of set it off was a hit from Brendan Smith on Connor Bedard that caused Connor Bedard to leave the game. My thoughts on that hit? It's a clean hit. Brendan Smith is definitely stepping up into that play because he's trying to prevent Connor Bedard from doing what Connor Bedard does. And it's crazy to me, and it just shows you how fast the game is. When you go back to watch that replay, Connor Bedard looks down for a split second, and when he looks back up, Brendan Smith is right there. And he's not able to do anything. He unfortunately has broken his jaw. I believe he's got surgery. He's not skating yet. And he will not be representing the Chicago Blackhawks in the All-Star game. So Gary Bettman really, 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 really doesn't like Brendan Smith right now. But yeah, it was a pretty chippy game. The first 2 periods were definitely very back and forth. It looked like this was going to be another game where the Devils dominate play. They are doing everything right, but they just can't score. But then in the third period, they took over, and that's when Nemec tied the game 5 minutes in. McLeod gave him the lead, and then Toffoli basically shut the door. And it was a good overall win, and it was great. The unfortunate thing about all this was it was the beginning of a back-to-back, in which case they then faced the Vancouver Canucks, in which, shocker, they lost. The tail end of the back-to-back games continues to be a thorn in the Devils' side. But this game was definitely interesting. It was a 6-4 loss, which makes it seem like it was close, but there were many periods during this I just stopped watching. Mainly the second period because, once again, the game just got away. Vancouver scored in the first 5 minutes 3 goals. It was 3-0 in the second period. It's just, I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to suffer through bad games. I'm just going to turn it off. Like, if it is what it is, Turned it off. Devils let in 3. It's like, okay, yeah, this game's over. And then I checked my phone because just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, and it was 4-2. It's like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And then, unfortunately, Vancouver just dominated. I mean, when you look at Vancouver, they are absolutely on a dominating streak right now, and it shows. They're very good. I don't know how long it can continue for them, but they were very good. 43 shots on net. They had 6 goals. Devils only had 25. All their big guns were contributing. JT Miller, Elias Pearson were leading the way. Quinn had a couple assists. It just, these back-to-back games continue to be tough for the Devils, and they need to figure things out because, unfortunately, they still have a couple more as we progress here through the season. But Devils close out this week 2-1. So at the end of the day, it's a positive record. It's a winning record. That's exactly the type of thing that we want. Now, we go into this past week here in which the Devils are on a 3-game road trip versus Atlantic teams. 2 were this week, 1 will be next week. So the first one was versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, and quite frankly, I was not expecting the Devils to win this game. They've just, with the injuries, with Siegenthaler breaking his foot in the Blackhawks game, Jack is out, Timo's out, Palat's out. Like, it was a mess. The top pairing at practice was Brendan Smith and Simone Nemec. That doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me as a fan. But I will say this, the Devils looked, well, for the most part, pretty good. They did lose the game 4-3 in OT. They were dominating play, but what ultimately did them in were 2 things. Number 1, rookie mistakes. I believe Nemec and Luke both had turnovers that led to goals. Rookie mistakes, they happen. But then the second thing was, and it's just the thing that plagues the Devils, goaltending. These next 2 games were very yin and yang, where in the Tampa Bay game, they were dominating play, but were let down by goaltending. And then as we head to the Florida game, the Devils were being dominated by the Panthers, but were saved by goaltending and post. I think there was 4 post shots. So yeah, Devils last night facing the Florida Panthers pull out a 4-1 win. Nico Daws was in net, and Nico Daws looked very good. The Panthers had 37 shots on net, and he stopped 36 of them. That is absolutely what the Devils needed for this. And overall, it was a very good game. It was crazy watching the end of it when Panthers pulled their goalie and John Marino, Chris Tierney, and I think it would have been Lazar, took about 6 shots to get into the empty net. It was insane. But they were able to pull out the win. Nico Daws looked very good. He looked very solid back there. The Devils were definitely hemmed in by the Panthers. They might have been playing a little conservative to try to conserve the lead, which the Panthers you can't really do because the Panthers just keep coming at you. And they don't stop. They are very relenting. They are a very good team. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals. But we had goals from Holtz, Bratt, Halla, and as I mentioned, the empty net from Marino. So, as they get through this week, they were 1-1, but it was a very yin and yang. Like I said, the Tampa Bay game, they dominated play, let down by goaltending. The Florida Panthers game, they were dominated in play, but saved by goaltending. It is going to be a slogfest for these New Jersey Devils as we head into the next week, as we head into the All-Star break, as we head towards the end of the season. Things are not all of a sudden going to click. The 120 whatever point team we saw last year, they're not going to magically just come back. There's rumors that maybe a trade is happening. Kevin Weeks decided to blue ball everybody by posting a picture of Jacob Markstrom with eyes and then just basically throwing his phone into the ocean. And Markstrom has been linked with the Devils. The Devils have traded with the Flames. So maybe something is there. It is definitely a positive thing to know that Nico Daws is playing very good. But I don't know if Nico Daws is what you want to lean on. He's still very young. He is still developing. He also just came back from major hip surgery. You do not want to push that. But I think the Tampa Bay game might have been the last straw for Fitz with VTech. And I think you're going to have to move on from VTech. I don't know how you can reliably put this guy in net and hopefully he can pull out a win for you, especially when we look at the schedule next week. Tomorrow they have the Boston Bruins. Then Wednesday they are at home versus the Montreal Canadiens, and then Friday they have a back-to-back, and it's a away home game. Friday they will be in Columbus taking on the Blue Jackets, and then they come home to face the Dallas Stars. Which game do you? I mean, VTech maybe plays against Columbus, maybe, but you're gonna rely on Nico Dawes for 3 games next week. It doesn't get easier. That's basically what I'm getting at here. The Devils are going to have to address goaltending at some point. You cannot keep throwing out the same thing and hoping that it works. Especially when you look at the standings, because currently the Devils are only 1 point out of the wild card, which is great. That's awesome. They also have games in hand on the 2 teams ahead of them. The 2 teams are the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have 44 games played, the New York Islanders, who have 42 games played. The Devils only have 40. So these games are going to be important because as you play those games and catch up to the teams ahead of you, you need to win them. And I don't want to every week turn this into the we need goaltending. I do think Fitz is going to pull the trigger sooner rather than later, though, when it comes to this. Because then the following week, you have 3 very tough games versus the Golden Knights, the Canes, and the Lightning. And then you get to the All-Star break, I believe. Yeah, and then it's the All-Star break, in which the Devils will be represented by Jack Hughes, which is great. But then you're right back at it. You have the Avalanche, the Flames, the Canes. You're going to be playing a lot of important games coming up. And, it's not going to get easier. So I do think Fitz needs to address goaltending. They seem to have found at least one piece with Nico Dawes. But with how the NHL works now, a tandem is more important. And I feel like the Devils are going to have to do something. This team is owed that because, quite frankly, maybe a month ago, they were in a much worse position than they are now. They're there. They're pushing towards the playoffs. They can make the playoffs. But they need help, especially with all the injuries that they have. So, Fitz is a very smart GM. He's going to make moves that make sense. Absolutely know that. Absolutely respect that. But he's got to make a move eventually. But that is going to do it for this week. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for understanding. If you do try to tune in every Sunday, just was a little bit busy last week. I promise this is not going to become a bi-weekly series. I will get back to the name of the series, which is a weekly roundup of the Devils games and my thoughts. If you want to, you can follow me on my socials here and subscribe. Leave a comment. Like it. Let me know what you would want me to talk about. And once again, my name is Lippy. This was the Devils Weekly Roundup, and I promise you, I will see you next week.